Ooh, it's happening, guys. It's happening. The single most important fight in combat sports history since UFC 1. This is not a hyperbolic statement. I'm dead serious when I say that. Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Let's talk about DK Yoo versus Bradley Scott. If you don't know who these guys are, let me explain who they are and why it's so dang important to combat sports history. DK Yoo, popular internet martial arts guru, respected by millions of fans on YouTube and other social media platforms. He's heralded as the second coming of Bruce Lee. He does all kinds of different moves from a bunch of different fighting styles, and a bunch of nerds are super impressed with him. Bradley Scott, former UFC middleweight, and a pretty good one at that, in an open weight boxing match. And this is happening December 4th in South Korea, live on pay-per-view. I'll put the links in the description below so you can go check it out and support Brad and DK in this bout. And yeah, it's gonna be a slaughter. Yeah, I said it. It's gonna be a one-sided slaughter. This is absolutely not a fair fight. DK Yoo apparently doesn't know that, or he has simply accepted his fate. Am I biased? No. I'm pragmatic. So why is this fight so important? DK Yoo represents a certain breed of martial artist. Guys like DK Yoo, Master Wong, Jake Mace. You know, these guys who are really popular on the internet. These guys who have quite a following. And maybe they have something to offer. But that something to offer is not being a combat sports athlete. It's not. These guys are not fighters. And I don't say that disparagingly. Everybody should train. And I'm glad these guys are encouraging people to get out there and train. That's good. That's awesome. That's great. More power to them in that regard. But they're not fighters. Not everybody should fight. But this fight should happen. Why? Just like UFC 1 opened up a lot of eyes, and the subsequent UFCs open up a lot of eyes to what real fights are, and how real fights work, and what does work in fights, and what doesn't work in fights. And before you casuals start chiming in saying, but the UFC has rules. They didn't used to, guys. The original UFC, no rules, no time limits, no weight classes, no gloves. And the only ways to win? Knockout or submission. So what happened? For the 2 or 3 people out there who don't know what happened in UFC 1, a non-imposing guy named Royce Gracie, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu expert, tapped out a bunch of guys, choked them out, strangled them, who didn't know how to grapple. And before that, what did people think about martial arts? You said martial arts? They do the karate knife hands? Oh yeah, martial arts, like karate. Hi-ya! Right? They would associate it with striking. Not just striking, but exotic, Asian striking. And we all kind of expected to see this in UFC 1. We wanted to see a live-action blood sport. And instead, we got a dude in a gi grappling people to death in short order. And it was anticlimactic, and a lot of us didn't like it, especially those of us who had invested a lot of time into these traditional, esoteric Asian striking arts. Esoteric might not be the right word, but it seemed like back in the 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s, the more esoteric and Asian your martial art was, the more legit it seemed. The more difficult to pronounce the name was, the more legitimate it seemed. Not anymore. Not anymore. So why is this fight so important? Well, UFC 1 set the groundwork for what actual hand-to-hand combat looks like. And then we have a guy over here in China, a guy named Xu Xiaodong, who beat up some kung fu pretenders who didn't know how to fight, but presented themselves as masters of Chinese martial arts. And Xu Xiaodong, fairly low level, but very aggressive mixed martial artist, goes and beats these guys up in seconds. And it opens up a lot of eyes around the world like, whoa, well, wait a minute. There's something to this. Real fights are different than they played out in our heads in this power fantasy of esoteric Asian styles. But what's different about DK Yoo and Bradley Scott? DK Yoo is not a pretender, if you will, in the same sense that a guy like, oh, what was his name? That fake Tai Chi master that Shu Xiaodong beat up? Wei Lei. Yeah. Wei Lei was a literal magician who did magic tricks to trick people into thinking he had magic powers, basically, and that his Tai Chi was some sort of mystical spiritual energy that he could use to perform these supernatural feats. And clearly that didn't match up very well against human fists flying at his face. Right? DK Yoo is a martial arts instructor. He teaches people martial arts, and what he teaches isn't necessarily bad or wrong, although I did make a video where I took issue with 3 very specific things that he is notable for doing. Striking his students in the head, for example, when they are not intelligently defending themselves. That was one. And another one was some cheap parlor tricks. But for the most part, I mean, he's a martial arts instructor in the same way Master Wong is a martial arts instructor, in the same way Jake Mace is a martial arts instructor, and in the same way many other people are martial arts instructors. I got a question today. Somebody asked me, Ramsey, what's the difference between a fighter and a martial artist? If any, is there a difference? Well, it's pretty simple. And it sounds pretty obvious when you say it out loud. And it sounds like you're being dismissive giving this answer, but it's the truth. A fighter is someone who fights. A martial artist is someone who practices martial arts. A martial artist can be a fighter if that martial artist fights. And a fighter can be a martial artist if that fighter practices martial arts. But martial artists are not always fighters, and fighters are not always martial artists. It's kind of like the bugs and insects conundrum. Not all insects are bugs, but all bugs are insects. Unless we're talking about bugs in the colloquial sense, meaning, oh, I caught a bug, meaning germ, colloquially. But that's a whole different tangent. Let's not go down that road. Bradley Scott, 100-kilo former UFC fighter, who specializes in fists and hitting pretty dang hard and accurately with them in dangerous combinations. Against DK Yoo, a guy who, I'm just gonna say it bluntly, is not a good boxer. And yet DK Yoo has chosen boxing as the specific rule set. And this is something that a lot of people who don't know how to fight resort to when challenging MMA fighters, because they think it's going to keep them safe. They think those limitations and the structure of boxing is going to somehow give them an advantage. Well, in the case of a guy like, say, Jake Paul against Ben Askren, who was a wrestler who didn't really know much about boxing, and Jake Paul, who had invested an enormous amount of time and effort and energy and resources into becoming the best boxer he possibly could, went into that fight understanding, we're going to play my game, the one that I am more skilled at, and that will give me the advantage. And he wasn't wrong. DK Yoo, on the other hand, a guy who has advertised himself as a master of pretty much every martial arts style, when going up against the actual mixed martial artist, who is a specialist in multiple disciplines. An MMA fighter isn't just a jack of all trades. It's a guy who knows how to strike and strike well. It's a guy who knows how to grapple and grapple well. It's a guy who knows how to clinch fight and clinch fight well. It's a guy who knows how to bridge the gap between those things and do it well. It's a guy who understands submission fighting and to do it well. And of course there are levels to those individual games in the sport of mixed martial arts. But if you take a UFC level fighter, a well-rounded one, like Bradley Scott, who knows how to grapple, and he knows how to strike, and he knows how to do those things well, and put them against a YouTube guy whose claim to fame is hitting skinny little dudes in the head while they're wearing a motorcycle helmet and not fighting back and allowing him to do it. And a bunch of kids on the internet seeing this going like, whoa, he hit him really hard. That's so impressive. Ooh. One of these is not like the other. They're not the same. And maybe DK Yoo is simply trying to minimize the damage because he knows he doesn't know how to grapple. And he knows if it was an MMA fight, Bradley Scott would take him down instantly, crush him instantly. Probably, if he was not in a good mood, maybe drop some elbows on his face. And if he was feeling merciful, strangle him with the Armin guillotine he's so famous for. But I tell you what, that's a much more merciful exit than getting a pummeling in a boxing match. And that's another thing people who don't fight and don't know how to fight and don't understand boxing think, is that the bigger gloves are going to keep you safer. No, those bigger gloves allow you to punch harder. Meaning, they allow you to receive more damage. So DK Yoo is going to get walloped. He's gonna get messed up, man. Well, not that messed up. He's gonna fall down and he's not gonna get up. And it's going to be a pretty quick KO or TKO within the first round. Unless he's a really good sprinter, in which case it's still going to be a first round knockout. It just is. What's this fight going to do? It's going to set a precedent. This is why it's so important. The most important fight since UFC 1, even though it's a boxing match. It's going to set a precedent for all of these other martial artists who are not fighters, but who are heralded as fighters. It's going to set a precedent for guys like Master Wong, who have this tremendous following of guys who think that they are these indestructible fighters. Now, I don't know if Master Wong is a good martial arts instructor. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I've just seen his over-the-top crazy character on YouTube. But what I do know, he's not a fighter. He's not. If he was, well, that's how he would be making a living. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out there and prove themselves and get in a cage fight. No, you don't. You don't. But the precedent being set here is, stop presenting yourself as a fighter unless you are actually willing to fight. Martial arts is for everybody. Everybody should practice martial arts. And there are many, many ways to participate in martial arts without getting into a cage fight or into a boxing ring and getting into a scrap. You can do that. You can be one of these karate forms guys who just does forms. Maybe you compete in forms. Maybe you don't compete at all in anything. And that's fine. And you're still a martial artist. And that's a legitimate thing to do. Martial arts as a hobby, that's fine, that's great. Martial arts for health and fitness, that's fine. Martial arts for mental clarity and stability of mind, that's great, that's admirable. You should do that. As I always say, martial arts is a pursuit of the truth. It really should be, and yet so many martial artists lie to themselves and willingly or unwillingly lie to others. My hat goes off to DK Yoo. The hat that I'm not wearing, figuratively speaking, goes off to him. My respect level for him went way up when he accepted this fight, when he offered this fight to Bradley Scott. Because before, my respect level for him was kind of in the toilet. But the fact that he's willing to take that step and say, you know what, I'm going to make an honest man out of myself. I have presented myself as a fighter. It's time to take my lumps as a fighter. So if he is being honest with himself, which I don't know if he is, he knows he's walking into essentially an unwinnable fight. Unless the stars align and Bradley Scott somehow has a stroke in the middle of round one in the first 10 seconds and somehow becomes debilitated. But that's not going to happen. It's just simply not going to happen. This precedent that is being set by this fight is enormous, and it is important. Because DK Yoo, he's not just some random guy. He's a dude with a massive following. Massive worldwide following. His fans are watching this, and this is going to answer some very interesting questions. When the whole Master Wong debacle was starting with me, if you're not familiar with that whole soap opera, that whole drama, I'll give you the quick recap. A few years back, I made a video about the rear naked choke. Master Wong made no less than 12 videos on how to perform a rear naked choke, and about 12 more on how to defend the rear naked choke, and they were bad. They had huge holes in them. He's teaching the technique wrong, and he's teaching the defense in ways that are not effective and actually detrimental to the person trying to use them. So I made a video and I pointed that out, and ooh, he got mad, and he made a 20-minute angry shouting rant calling me an idiot and saying, I do these things for the streets, not for the ring, not for the cage. Ah, you idiot, you don't understand.
I do the stuff for the street. I do the stuff for the street. I do the
Give it up for the boy, Master Wong.
for the street. For the street.
For the streets, yo.
For the street.
So I'm looking through the comments of this video, and I see this one fellow say, Master Wong, please, choke out Ramsey Dewey. To which Master Wong is like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. To which I reply, sweet, I accept the fight. To which Master Wong promptly replied, I don't have anything to prove. I'm better than that. I'm better than this idiot. I will not fight him. I will not even acknowledge him. I will only address him in third person. As soon as it became real, he tucked his tail and he turned. And of course, I got hate mail from his fans for a long time. You suck. You're the worst fighter ever. Master Wong would kill you if that actually happened. Okay. And this went on for some time. And I still get hate mail from Master Wong's fans telling me what a schmuck I am and how awesome Master Wong is, and I'm not fit to unlace his sandals or whatever the the situation is, right? Master Wong's just so far above me, I should bow down and worship him, is what these guys say, basically. The Church of Master Wong has excommunicated me in droves. But, yeah, I was never officially a member. But anyway, what does that have to do with DK Yoo? DK Yoo is putting his reputation on the line. And he's doing something that might cost him a lot of fans. Specifically, the fans who idolize him and put him up on a pedestal and think this guy is God. This guy is a demigod. This guy is everything that I imagine Bruce Lee would be. He's indestructible. He's unstoppable. And then they see an actual fighter systematically dismantle him in short order. And that bubble's going to pop, boom, and they're going to be like, oh no. Oh no. And maybe they'll make up excuses. Oh, he was just having a bad day. You know, you're always going to have those guys. But a lot of them are going to be like, well, dang. You let me down, bro. And they're going to drop off the bandwagon. So DK Yoo is taking a very big risk here. But is it a calculated risk? In one way, he's doing something very noble. Again, taking that unwinnable fight. It's something extremely manly that I don't know quite how else to put it. When you take that unwinnable fight against the unbeatable opponent, where you know you're going to lose, where you know you're going to get trounced and shown up in every single way. Man, I've done this. I took a fight on 1 week's notice with no time to train properly for it, against a guy named Leandro Issa, third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And I had to cut 30 pounds of weight in less than 24 hours, because I got the notice about the weight class less than a day before the actual fight. Before the weigh-in, sorry. And if you don't know what that means it drains your body of electrolytes, and you're going to be in really crappy shape for the fight. So, I go into this lose-lose scenario, but I'm thinking to myself, you know what, it's going to be okay, because it's actually a win-win scenario, because I'm the underdog here. If I somehow manage to eke out a win, okay, cool, I'm the man. But, more likely than not, here's what's going to happen. He's going to take me down, he's going to submit me, because that's what he does. He's just a superior grappler, and everybody knows that going in. But I know I took the unwinnable fight on short notice, and so I'll be able to pat myself on the back and tell myself I did something really manly. I did something that only brave people would do. So I'm telling myself this story. The reality. Like, when was it? 13 years later? Some folks see this fight on the internet, not understanding the context, and they're like, you suck. You suck. You're the worst fighter ever. Oh, you lost a fight in the first round. You tapped out like a little wimp. Boo. Boo. I would have kicked him in the head. I would have punched him in the face. Boo. Repeat that 10,000 times over. So, this may be the thought process going on in DK Yoo's mind. He might be thinking, you know what? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to fight a UFC fighter. This might be my only chance to do it. I'm going to get some street cred for this. This is a brave thing to do. And in my estimation, he's not wrong if that's what he's thinking. It is a brave thing to do. I personally would not want to compete against Bradley Scott. I'd love to train with him, but I wouldn't want to compete against him. I've seen that dude fight, man. And when those fists are flying with bad intentions, ooh, you do not want those hitting you. You don't. So my hat goes off to DK Yoo. How do you pronounce that? Is a DK Yoo? Is a DK Yoo? Is it an actual name with no vowel sounds in it? Like DK Yoo? I don't know. I'm just going to keep calling him DK Yoo for the remainder of this video. It seems to be what people say on the internet these days. It's funny because I know exactly how this fight is going to end. The fight. It's going to end very quickly in a knockout. Or a technical knockout in case the referee stops it before DK Yoo is laid out flat. But that is how it's going to end. The aftermath is the most important part, though. This is what makes this the most important fight in combat sports history. At least potentially, depending on how you react to it. Because if we all turn the other way and pretend it's not happening, nope, no, la 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 la. Yeah, nothing's important. I mean, there was mixed martial arts happening in this world before the UFC. Even in America, there were no-holds-barred fight promoters who put on events, but they didn't get traction. They didn't get attention. They didn't make money. They didn't get bought by casino owners and funded by the Fertitta brothers. That didn't happen. And so they went under the radar. Sambo was a thing in Russia for a very long time before the UFC, but nobody knew about that over in the West. Nobody paid attention to that in the West, so didn't see it, didn't happen. So whether or not it's important depends on the eyeballs on it. So how are we going to react to this? DK Yoo, a guy who I thought would never man up and get in the ring and fight, let alone get in the ring and fight with somebody at the level of Bradley Scott. He's doing it. And he's setting a precedent for all the other martial artists out there who present themselves as fighters. Guys, if that's you, time to fight. Time to make yourselves honest men. Time to do something very brave. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.
I do this stuff for the street. I do this stuff for the street. I do this
Give it
stuff
up for
for
my
the
boy,
street.
Master Wong.
For the street. For the street.
For the streets, yo.
For the
Yeah.
street.